What's up, everyone? Hockey Time here, back for the November 17th edition of the NHL Power Rankings. We had a pretty busy week here, the Global Series going on in Sweden. Some wildly high scoring games throughout the week. So let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Back at number 32 after 1 week at 31 is the San Jose Sharks. A couple wins collected here for these guys, which is good, but still far and away the worst team in the NHL. They're forward depth despite scoring a bit. Um, as usual, just not able to keep up with any other teams. Pretty much every game they play, they're getting outshot at least 2-1. The goaltending's still there for them from time to time, which is good. Capo Kakinen had a really solid performance the other day against the Blues, but that was really the highlight of their week. Not really anywhere to put them but 32. So for now, that is where they will stay. At number 31, dropping a spot as well, is the Columbus Blue Jackets. This team, again, struggling to find consistency. Johnny Gaudreau and Patrick Laine are not panning out the way that a lot of people expected them to this year. They're getting some good play from their depth guys, as well as some guys like Boone Jenner. Fantilli's looked really good. His point production isn't at the level of some of the other rookies, but he's been good nonetheless. But the goaltending's an issue. Their big guys aren't performing. The power play is pretty much non-existent. It's just a tough bid for the Blue Jackets right now as they continue to struggle with a number of different issues. At number 30, dropping another spot as well, the Chicago Blackhawks. The Hawks have been competitive in the games they've played recently. Bedard heated up a good bit this week. He had a good handful of points. But again, much like the Blue Jackets, this team doesn't have a lot to really look forward to, at least this season. The depth, as has been the case throughout the year, not really providing anything for them. As I mentioned last week, their goaltending leveling out from where it was to start the year. And just as they play more and more good teams, they're going to continue to probably struggle. A good example of that was their game against the Lightning the other day. They get outshot 2-1. Can't really produce anything. And when you're only scoring 2 goals, it's hard for Mrazek and Soderblom to provide enough saves to get you guys wins. So they stay at the bottom row this week, dropping a spot to number 30. Number 29, another team dropping a spot, is the Nashville Predators. The Preds have slowly slid their way down this list. Um, I didn't expect them to fall this far. Again, my expectations for this team coming into the season were not very high. Um, but we're at the point where their depth is really just non-existent offensively. UC Saros has been really struggling this year relative to the last handful of seasons for him, and this was a team that even when they had some more depth offensively, really, really relied on UC Saros to be a top 5 goalie in the league in order to find success. And when that's not the case, we see what happens, which is the case right now for the Preds. They are, I think, actually eighth in the standings in the Central. So, not the bottom Central team in these rankings, but for the standings, it's not looking good for them. Their playoff odds obviously aren't great, especially if Saros can't find his game as we move through the year. But for the time being, if this team can't get offense and UC Saros isn't making as many saves as he used to, it's a big problem for the Preds because they're just not going to find ways to win games playing like that. Number 28, by far the biggest drop of any team this week, is the New York Islanders. The Islanders finished last week pretty slow and continued that this week. They went winless. They're, I think, now on a 6 or 7 game losing skid. Sorokin, much like Saros, has not been as good as he was the last 2 seasons. Thankfully, Varlamov has been pretty good, so he's been filling in the holes where needed, but they're a pretty similar team to the Predators. They don't have a ton of offensive depth. I think they probably have more than the Preds. But that being said, they rely on a very heavy defensive focus game. And when they're not getting goaltending, it's hard to win games for them, which has been the case in a handful of games to this point. And again, much like the Preds, the offense is just not coming for them. So a big reason why they've been on such a big losing skid. They need to figure it back out if they want to have any chance of making the playoffs, because the Metro is somehow much more competitive than I think we anticipated. There's not so much of the top 3 teams running away with it as we thought there might have been to start the year, at least with the rosters they had on paper. Some injuries obviously playing into that. We'll touch on that for some of those teams down the road, but nonetheless, this is a fairly wide open Metro division as it stands today. The Islanders are not going to be a participant in that if they cannot figure out their scoring and get a handful more saves. Number 27, the first team that is staying in the same spot as last week, is Seattle. This team, again, just really back and forth. One game they look okay, the next game they kind of get stomped and walked all over. The goaltending from Philip Grubauer has just not been enough. It's not up to NHL starting goalie quality standards. Joey Decord's been okay in the games he's played. Frankly, I expect him to get some more starts. But another team that doesn't have a ton of scoring depth. My, I guess, thesis about their season last year being a bit of an anomaly has looked pretty accurate to start the year. They don't have that big scoring forward or big scoring line really that's going to carry their offense, and they're not getting the like overall 20 plus players getting 20 plus points is just not happening for them this year. So they need to get some more saves, much like the two aforementioned teams here. The defense has not been as good as it was last year, and the depth has not been as good as it was last year. Offensively, all of that is a recipe for them being in the bottom row of these power rankings. And until one of those three things changes, probably two of those three things changes, I don't see this team moving up anywhere quickly. Number 26, moving up 6 spots from last week, are the Edmonton Oilers. After losing to San Jose, the Oilers said enough was enough, and they are now, I believe, on a 3 or 4 game winning streak. Obviously, this was the first week with new coach Chris Knobloch. Um, they've looked better. Stuart Skinner has been good this week. I think 3 games above a 900 save percentage, which is definitely the first time he's done that this season. It's trending in the right direction for the Oilers. McDavid definitely still looks like he's hampering some kind of injury. Draisaitl still doesn't look the way he usually does, but some of their guys like Kane and Zach Hyman specifically have picked it up a good bit over the last handful of games. So if this team can continue to play the way they've been playing the last handful of games, they're going to be all right. I still wouldn't count this team out of a playoff spot. The goaltending has to be consistent if they're going to crawl their way back. But one way or another, it's going to be a crawl for this team. They need to get consistency from one of their big guys, if not both of them. And of course, Stuart Skinner needs to continue to play well now that Jack Campbell is in the minors and Calvin Pickard's their backup. So we'll see if the Oilers can continue this moving forward, but it was definitely an improved week for them, especially relative to their start to the season. Number 25, so staying put from last week, is the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers kind of a back and forth week here. Carter Hart returned, which was good. He had a good game in his return. Pretty funny comment from John Tortorella, kind of talking about people wanting this team to tank. And frankly, when he's at the helm of any team, that's just not going to happen. So, such is the case for Philly. I believe they're fifth in the Metro Division standings. Again, this division is kind of wide open as it stands right now. I don't know if I expect that to be the case long term, but for now, the Flyers are much like some of these other middle ground teams, fighting through every game, pretty competitive aside from a handful here or there. But just not enough depth offensively or defensively to have them really climb up the standings. Again, they went on a pretty good run to start the year. If they can create another couple of those, they might climb back up this list. But for the time being, it's just a hard time for them to climb when they're on this like on and off. Play one game well, play one game bad, play one game well, play one game bad. Not a recipe for climbing power rankings, but they're not in the basement, so that's good news for Flyers fans. Number 24, jumping 2 spots from last week, are the Calgary Flames. The Flames ended the week with a huge win over Vancouver, which was by far their best game of the season. Outplayed the Canucks pretty well. Got scoring from a handful of guys. It was really the perfect game for the Flames. They need to play many, many, many more games like that if they want a chance at making the playoffs. To this point, they've had trouble, finding consistency. If they can play more weeks the way they played this week, they're going to find their way back, at least fighting for a playoff spot. But we haven't seen that consistently from them to this point to start the year. So I did not want to bump them too far up the list like I did for Edmonton this week. Frankly, Edmonton was much lower than I think anyone expected, which is part of why they jumped so quickly. The Flames, I think we need to see another week or two out of them before they really start to jump up. But I think that team is capable of doing it. They just need to keep proving it with the way they play. So they can keep that up. They're going to climb this list. For now, I have them moving up 2 spots. We'll see if they can continue the positive momentum starting next week. At number 23, dropping a spot, are the Montreal Canadiens. This team, despite dropping a spot, maintains their level of grit, their competitiveness, etc. Once again, their goaltending has not kept up with their performance level that they had to start the year, but they have 3 NHL quality guys, not really elite NHL quality guys by any means, but all of Allen, Primo, and Montebo have been playing good enough to get them wins or at least keep them in games. As long as that's the case and this team plays with the energy they've played with to start the year, they're going to be competitive for a long time. Again, I don't know that I expect them to continue to scrap their way up the standings as they've been to this point. They're stealing points from teams. We'll see if they can keep it up. They have another game against the Bruins Saturday, so we'll see if that's as entertaining as the one earlier in the week was. Nonetheless, this team again, still fun to watch, which is really all you can ask if you're a Canadians fan. The expectations were not super high. Think really just wanted to see some improvement, and to this point in the year, they've definitely seen that. But kind of similar to Philly, a little bit back and forth. This week was a good example of that. So they do drop one spot to number 23. At number 22, dropping 5 spots, are the Minnesota Wild. I hesitated to really bump this team down at any point in the year up until this point, but we're at the point in the year where we're not just a handful of games in. Like some teams are pushing 15 games played already, and the Wild still don't seem to have their goaltending figured out, which is a big concern. I think they're kind of in a position similar to Calgary where it's time to maybe consider bringing up Jesper Wallstedt. Neither Gustafson or Fleury have really gotten it done to this point. Some games where they're really getting lit up, they really don't look confident in themselves, and this team doesn't have, um, you know, depth like the Lightning, the Panthers, the Avalanche, the Stars, some of these elite teams. Um, that are going to be in the playoffs. I think this team still expects to make the playoffs, but they need to figure something out in net because we're getting to the point in the season where if they don't figure it out, um, they're going to be in a territory kind of like, again, the Flames if their goaltending doesn't stay consistent, or the Oilers where they have guys that should be NHL quality and able to keep them in games, but to this point it just hasn't been the case. So that's the biggest issue for the Wild. Once they get that ironed out, I think they're going to be okay. But to this point, it's cost them a lot of points, frankly, and we'll see if they are able to figure it out. I'm hoping Gustafson bounces back because he really showed a lot of promise, especially at the end of last season. Provided really some Vezina quality numbers in the smaller sample size he played at the end there. So we'll see if he can get that back. I'm hoping he can. Until that happens, I can't justify having this team anywhere but in the third row. And frankly, if the goaltending continues to struggle, this team will continue to drop pretty quickly. Number 21, jumping 2 spots, are the Arizona Coyotes. This team has been the beneficiary of some fantastic goaltending from Connor Ingram. Vamelk has been all right too, but Ingram has, frankly started to try to steal the starting job from him. He's, I think, 6-1-0 now on the season. A good example of the way he's been playing is their game against Columbus earlier in the week. Elvis was actually pretty good, which we have not had the chance to say, too often this year. And Connor Ingram says, not so fast. I'm still going to steal this game. 39 of 41 saves. And I think a 3-2 win for them. So games like that would have been keeping the Coyotes competitive and kind of in the middle of the Central Division standings. They've actually been getting some decent goal scoring depth too. Guys like Lawson Krause, Michael Carcone, Sean Dursey's actually up there too, but their point leaders in general are kind of the big faces you'd expect to see, Logan Cooley, Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, etc. So we'll see if they can kind of couple those two things together long term. If Ingram can continue to play well throughout the year, goaltending super important, and if that's the way he's going to be for the season, maybe this team has a closer shot at the playoffs than we thought heading into things. But we'll see. I'm still, it's his first time really getting like even 1A, 1B type split as far as game distribution goes. So if he can keep that up, this team might stay competitive for a lot longer into the season than we thought. But we'll have to see how that goes long term. For now, they've been impressive. They've been gritty. They're staying in a lot of their games. Hence their spot at number 21. At number 20, another team dropping pretty heavily. This time, 6 spots, are the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres, the goaltending has just not really been there to the extent that they need it to this point in the season. UPL has frankly been their best goalie. Eric Comrie had a game, a start for the first time, I think, since Levi's injury against the Jets tonight. He gives up 3 goals on 18 shots. I think 3 on 5 in the second period or something like that. So a tough game for him. Devin Levi has not lived up to the expectations to start the year. I think he's had one game above like a 920 or 930. And aside from that, a lot of his games have been like sub 880 or 870 save percentage goaltending, which is just not enough to maintain your job as a starting goalie in the NHL. So um, if it's me, I'm probably taking UPL as the starting role for the considerable future for this team. I think people forget he's still pretty young, like 22 or 23 years old, a really high touted prospect coming in to start his career. And it's just taken him a bit to pan out because he's frankly still a kid. So I would move forward with him if I was, Coach Don Granato, but I'm not. So we'll see what happens. Um, Other tough news for them is that they're going to be missing Tage Thompson long term. We haven't really gotten a timetable on what long term is, but obviously that's a huge loss for the Sabres. He was their probably most dominant offensive player last year. Now they're going to be banking a lot more on the likes of Dylan Cousins, Alex Tuck, and Jeff Skinner. So we'll see if the Sabres can maintain their place in the standings. Again, a lot of these divisions are pretty wide open, especially in the middle of things. So the Sabres are still right there, but goaltending has been an issue for this team. Scoring is going to be an issue for this team without Tage Thompson. And frankly, they've had moments in the season where it's been an issue even with him in the lineup. So they do drop a good handful of spots. It was not a very good week for them. We'll see if they can rebound starting Saturday. At number 19, jumping 5 spots, are the Washington Capitals. This team had a surprisingly good week, which I did not expect. Um, Darcy Kemper is hurt, so I was like, all right, maybe the week's kind of chalk, maybe 2 weeks are chalk, however long he's going to be hurt for. But Charlie Lindgren had a fantastic week. Hunter Shepard also had a great game in the game he, stepped in and took care of business for them. Obviously, again, second full week without Nikki B, and guys like Dylan Strome are still picking it up. A lot of depth pieces, AHL call ups, really getting the work done for this team. Uh, I don't really know what to say, to be honest. I'm surprised to see them this high in the standings, especially the way they started the year. Ovechkin's still struggling to score a lot of goals, so another reason that I'm surprised to see them this high. But they've been finding ways to win games, and if you find results and you get the W's, you're going to climb the board, and that's exactly what's happened with the Caps. So I don't know that I expect them to continue this moving forward, but we'll see if they can. If they get good goaltending, especially from Charlie Lindgren, if Darcy Kemper struggles once he comes back, that's huge because Kemper to start the year has not been good. I know he had a kid; he's got family stuff going on, but um, that's a huge W for the Caps if Lindgren can continue to play well and if they can find the depth scoring they've found over the last week or two. Big for them. I don't know that I expect it to continue, but only one thing will tell, and that's time. So for now, the Caps are 19. We will see if they can keep it up moving into next week. At number 18, moving up 3 spots, are the St. Louis Blues. This team would have moved up a lot more if it weren't for their loss to the Sharks. They beat the living hell out of the Avalanche, and then a pretty convincing win as well against the Tampa Bay Lightning, a 5-0 final there. So 2 really, really big wins, and then you come into San Jose and just kind of lay an egg. So, I mean, this team would have been, I'm looking at like maybe 14th, 15th, like a 3-0 week where you beat Colorado and Tampa is big. I know Colorado's been having some struggles of their own. Tampa Bay doesn't have Andre Vasilevsky, yada, yada, yada. Those are still 2 very good teams. They're teams that, if they make the playoffs, will be contenders for the Stanley Cup. To beat both of them in the ways that they beat them is big for the Blues, but losing to the Sharks is big in a pretty bad way. So we'll see what this team has long term. Again, their defense has been really impressive. Their goaltending's been fantastic. Jordan Binnington seems to be focused on stopping pucks instead of throwing punches, so that's always good. And their scoring, which was slow to start the year, like came out in a big way this week. 13 goals in 2 games, again, between the Avs and the Lightning. Not a small achievement. So if they can keep that up, this team, again, another division that's pretty wide open, especially in that like 3 through 6 range. The Central's included there, especially with a team like the Wild, who was kind of the favorite for the 3 spot to make the playoffs, not doing so well. Teams like Winnipeg and St. Louis should be chomping at the bit to try to accumulate as many points ahead of Minnesota as they can. So St. Louis has been good. We'll see if they can continue it. I still have my doubts about Jordan Binnington, but he's proven me wrong to this point to start the year. If they can continue to score goals, this team is going to be dangerous. Um, we'll see if they can keep it up. I don't know. It's an interesting team to watch. I didn't expect to be this intrigued by the Blues this far into the year, but here we are. Number 17, dropping a spot, are the Anaheim Ducks. This team's hot streak has definitely come to an end. Lucas Dessal's numbers have not been as good as they were over the last handful of games. John Gibson's been playing better, so that's good. But just in general, the momentum that they were riding has kind of ran out. The scoring hasn't been there as much as it was during that streak of 6 wins. Trevor Zegras has been hurt, obviously still missing Jamie Drysdale. Minshikov's still been good. McTavish has still been good. Leo Carlson, the games he's played, has been really good. But just kind of battling inconsistency for this team, which not unexpected. I think 17 is frankly still pretty high compared to where I expect them to be at the end of the season. But for the time being, they're competitive in the games they're playing. They just need to try to find consistency, much like a lot of these kind of like lower middle of the pack teams. We'll see if they can continue to stay up in this mid range. Again, long term, I don't think 17 is the right spot for them. The way they've been playing lately, I think it's probably fair, but I just don't know that I expect them to be able to keep this up over the course of the next month. Never mind an 82 game season, but we'll see. John Gibson, when he's playing well in the long past, has found ways to be the great equalizer. He's looked more like that this season than he has in probably 4 years, so that's good news for the Ducks if he can keep that up. I could be very wrong here, but for now, some inconsistencies both offensively and defensively, and missing some of their big guys puts them at number 17. Number 16, moving up 2 spots, which feels a bit weird, but it's the Ottawa Senators. They had a short week this week, obviously. They beat the Red Wings in Sweden. Almost found a way to throw that game away, but they maintained their composure, found a way to get it done in overtime. This team just needs to figure out the goaltending. The offense is there for them. If they can get a couple extra saves, they're going to be good. Jonas Korpisalo needs to be the guy for them. He has some games where he looks great. He has some other games where he looks not great at all. But that's kind of been the story of his career to this point. So if he can live up to that $5 million contract that the Sens are paying him, his team's going to be fine. I've been saying it for the last 3-4 weeks. I feel like I'm kind of permanently echoing myself with this team in particular. But if they can keep up the consistency in net, they should be good. Until that happens, they're middle of the road. At number 15, the same spot as they were last week, is still the Detroit Red Wings. Same issues here for the Wings as really are in place for the Senators. The goaltending has fallen off a good bit. You have James Reimer ducking under shots. I don't know what the hell that's about, but here we are. Obviously, Ville Husso had a kid, so A, congrats to him, but B, kind of a tough week for the Red Wings as far as goaltending goes. Alex Lyon did look all right in his game today, but wasn't good enough to get the job done. Obviously, playing a pretty good offensive Leafs team, so not entirely a knock on him. But again, I mentioned that it was going to be kind of tough for him to step in and into his first game, whenever that was. Happened to be against the Leafs, so not the best luck for Alex Lyon. Nonetheless, you're a pro player. You got to be able to step in and do the job. And he, despite being all right, wasn't able to do that. So the Wings, same, like I mentioned, same struggles as the Sens. Goaltending is hit or miss. The scoring tends to be pretty good. The defense is definitely looking more like what we expected it to be to start the year with some of the offseason additions they made. So we'll see. Again, the Atlantic Division with some of these middle ground teams is wide open, much like it was expected to be, and we'll see which of these teams can kind of jump on the opportunity. So far, it looks like they're trying to just kind of hand it back and forth to one another. No one really wants to take the playoff spots that are up for grabs, so we'll see who decides to do that. Which is a great segue into my number 14 team, the Tampa Bay Lightning. They dropped 3 spots. They may very well claim that third probably spot in the Atlantic once Andrei Vasilevsky comes back, because that is the only thing holding this team back. Johansson has definitely leveled out to more of what we expect him to be. Matt Tompkins was never going to be the guy that played a lot of games for them. In the games he's played, he just hasn't been great. But Johansson especially has been seeing a lot more sub 900 save percentage goaltending. Good news for the Bolts is that Vasi is back practicing, so maybe by or just after Thanksgiving he'll be getting some game action. The offense is there for Tampa, much like we expected it to be. Kucherov has been unbelievable. Braden Point has started to heat up since his slow start to the year. Victor Hedman, I think, is second in scoring for defensemen. Mikhail Sergachev definitely looks a little bit uninspired in some of these games, but aside from that, most things are really clicking at a pretty good rate for the Lightning. They just need a few more saves, and we're, probably counting on one hand how many weeks out we are from seeing Andrei Vasilevsky return. Once that happens, assuming he's in Andrei Vasilevsky type form, I expect this team to probably have a pretty quick jump, because the offense has been cooking for Lightning. They just need a few saves. Number 13, jumping 6 spots, are the Pittsburgh Penguins. This team has heated back up. It seems like the trend for the Penguins is for a couple games they're good, for a couple games they're pretty bad, and then for some more games they're good. So we'll see if next week they go back to being bad or if they continue to play well. This week they played pretty well. The goaltending has been there. Tristan Jarry, I think, leads the league in shutouts with only 11 games played, which is kind of hilarious. But that being said, if he continues to be healthy and play it the way he's been playing, this team's going to be in good shape, because that was one of the bigger concerns for them coming into the year. If that's not an issue for them, obviously, they're going to be fine. So, yeah, I hate it as a Caps fan, but it is what it is. Crosby looks like Crosby. Malkin, looks angry, but that's Malkin. Erik Karlsson has started to warm up a bit. It seems like the team's kind of adjusting to his play style. He's adjusting to the team's play style, et cetera, et cetera. So The Penguins look dangerous, which annoys me, but again, it is what it is. If Jari stays healthy, this team's going to be fine, and to this point, that's been the case. So they stay at 13 this week, or they jumped 13 this week, excuse me. We will see if they are able to jump much higher than that, but there are a lot of really good teams ahead of them, so we will see how much further they're able to climb. At number 12, jumping up just one spot, are the Toronto Maple Leafs. These next handful of teams all had pretty solid weeks, but they were all kind of lumped in sequential order. So a lot of these teams are kind of staying in roughly the same position they were in the last week or two. The Leafs are the first of those teams, so a better week, again, a shortened week with them traveling to Sweden, but a win today against the Detroit Red Wings. And then to end the week last week, a big win against Vancouver. So those two games alone, they go 2-0. They can't really jump too high because the teams ahead of them also played pretty well. But for the Leafs, if they can continue this trend, Samsonov playing a bit better, the offense still doing what the offense does, and the defense just not completely crumbling into AHL/ECHL form, this team's going to be fine. Number 11, dropping two spots, are the Colorado Avalanche. The only one of these teams in the next few that really drop a good bit. The Avs, again, on and off week, struggled coming into the week. They get their asses handed them by the Blues. They turn around to the Ducks and say, "Here, you can have your ass." Um, just a weird week for the Avs. The goaltending is still a bit of an issue. Ivan Prosvetov has not been great in the games he's played. We get the news that Francouz is going to be out for the year, so we'll see if the Avs go back up goaltender hunting or not. I personally would probably like to see them do that, just because, again, in the games he's played, Prosvetov, both statistically and the eye test, just hasn't looked ready for the challenge, but we'll see whether they feel the need to make that move or not. The other thing is Nate McKinnon not really performing at true Nate McKinnon levels. Don't get me wrong, he's still been good, but I think the Avs probably need a bit more from him. Mikko Rantanen has been by far their best player to start the year, so we'll see if the Avs can find consistency again. I think I've been saying this for the last 3 weeks, but it's been an on and off challenge since the Avs really started hot to start the year. If they can pick it back up, they're going to be fine. Again, not worried about them making the playoffs. I think their record's still 10-5 or 11-5, 10-6, whatever. Good for second in the Central. Obviously, barring some kind of drastic downfall, I don't expect this team to have any long-term issues, but just some, getting into the midseason inconsistencies. If they can figure it out, they're going to climb back up the list pretty quickly, I think. But for now, with the struggles that they've been having and the on and off performances, they do have to stay in this second row at number 11. At number 10, moving up two spots, are the Winnipeg Jets. They had another really good week. Kyle Connor has been great for them. Their depth scoring as a whole has been really good. Connor Hellebuck has continued to round back into form. His numbers are still not otherworldly. They're not ground beating, but they're good enough to get wins, and that's all you really need from him. Frankly, if the Jets are getting wins at this rate with him only playing kind of like slightly above average, I don't want to see what they're capable of if he's playing like the Connor Hellebuck of years past. So the Jets, all in all, have just looked really good. Even guys like Brendan Dillon, I think his career high in goals is like 6. He's got 4 already in 16 games. So a lot of things going right for the Jets. Again, wide open Central Division to this point. If they continue to play this way, they are going to find themselves jumping into a playoff spot, especially with some of these teams in the Pacific. If you look at the previous teams mentioned, San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Seattle, Edmonton, Calgary, Minnesota, Arizona, St. Louis, Anaheim, like all these teams are Western teams below them. Have a very good chance of making the playoffs if they can just keep up what they're doing. So, that being said, the Jets were really good this week. They jump a couple spots. We will see if they can find more ground to improve upon. But to this point in the season, they've been surprisingly fun to watch and B, very good. Number 9, once again staying put, are the New Jersey Devils. This team just kind of holding pat while they wait for the return of Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. They get a surprising win the other night when they were missing both of those two plus Timo Meyer. The goaltending, as it's been the case the whole year, has been pretty on and off. Vitek Vanacek some games has a 920 plus save percentage, some games has an 890 or below save percentage. Much like guys like Devin Levi, Tristan Jarry when he's off his game, those types of goalies where if they're bad, and if they're good, they're pretty good. So the Devils just kind of in the same holding pattern as the Lightning, wait for Vasilevsky. Once those guys are back, I expect them to have their record pick up a little bit. Right now, they're kind of right in the middle of that Metro division, I think in 5th or 6th. So we'll see if the offense picks back up for them at a more consistent rate once those big name guys are back. Curious to see with the way the goaltending's been to this point if they look to make a move. Um, Again, I know we're still pretty early on the season. Um, wouldn't expect them to make that move anytime soon if it were to be the case, but um, it does worry me a little bit come playoff time if they roll with this tandem. We'll see what they decide to do. But for now, in a bit of a holding pattern with the Devils, they stay at 9. We'll see if once Hughes and Heischer come back, they can start to climb back up this list. At number 8, dropping one spot are the Carolina Hurricanes. Kind of a similar story, frankly, to the Devils. Bit middle of the pack right now. The goaltending without Freddie Anderson has been kind of hit or miss. Kachetkov popped into a game this week, or I think 2 games this week. Was not great in either, but was good enough to keep the team in the game. The scoring has not been what it was to start the year. I mean, they started with that crazy stat of like 24 goals for and against in 5 games or whatever. Um, it's cooled down a bit. Uh, some of their depth guys like Kotkaniemi, Teuvo Teravainen have still been pretty good. I think if they can get the more like holistically well-rounded scoring that they've had in years past, this team should still be fine. Um, I don't know, maybe it's just a gut thing for me. I am a little bit concerned about this team long term. There's not really one thing in particular I can point to, which doesn't make for a great opinion, to be honest. But I don't know. The Canes just haven't had me feeling as confident this year as they had in years past, but we will see what they're capable of long term. Again, they've been kind of ho humming their way through the season, but have been good enough to maintain a decent record, a decent level of play. But we'll see what they're able to do long term with kind of the pieces that they've been given. At number 7, dropping 4 spots, are the Vancouver Canucks. This team had a tougher week after the end to their winning streak last week. Obviously, the loss to the Leafs. They win a couple games, then they lose another tough one to the Flames. So, um, kind of, I think, just a bit of a reset on the Canucks. We'll see that this is a little bit closer to where they actually belong. The games they won this week were not against any opponents that were super impressive. So we'll see what they're capable of. The offense has still been there for them, aside from that. Again, the 2 losses, I think they were both 5-2 losses, so not great for the goaltenders or for the scoring, but um, I think they still have 3 guys in the top 5 or 6 point leaders in the league, which is hilarious. But the depth was not there this week as much as it's been in the past, which was, one of the biggest reasons for why they had been playing so well. If that can pick back up, they're going to be okay. If it continues to taper off, this team's probably going to continue to fall a little bit to more of where they're expected to be given their roster on paper. But for the time being and the way that they played the weeks leading up to this, I'm not going to drop them 10 plus spots for a 2-2 record on the week. So they're going to stay at 7 for now. It is a 4 spot drop. We'll see if they regain their level of play, if they kind of sit pat, or if they continue to fall moving into next week. At number 6, moving up 2 spots, are the Florida Panthers. This team feels a bit like LA from a couple weeks ago, which is ironic because they lost to LA the other day. So everything's been going right for them, frankly. Again, aside from the one loss to LA. But Bobrovsky's been fantastic. The scoring all around has been really good. The defense, still without Brandon Montour and Aaron Ekblad, has been very good. So this team playing as well as they are without those 2 big guys is kind of scary. Uh, I expected this team to make the playoffs. I did not expect them to be doing this to start the year. So we'll see if it's something they can maintain. I don't know that I expect them to be able to keep this kind of like breakneck pace going over the long term, but it's definitely a good stretch for them. It's not just a statistics thing. Like the eye test looks very good. They're playing pretty strong in games. I think I mentioned last year as like last week as like the meat grinder that they were in the playoffs last year. That's definitely still the case. And once they get Montour and Ekblad back, that's going to be even worse. So we'll see if they can keep it up. For now, they're 6. They've just been really impressive over the last 2 weeks. At number 5, the team that beat them this week, the LA Kings, they move up 1 spot. Similar story. The goaltending's been great. They're getting depth scoring. The defense has looked awesome. Same story as has been the case for the last really 2 weeks for the Kings. All things clicking. As long as Cam Talbot can stay healthy and play the way he's been playing, this team's going to be in really good shape. Not really contradicting anything that we saw from them in the preseason or, what we expected based on their roster. So as long as they stay healthy and the goaltending maintains its condition as it's been to this point in the year, this team's going to be solid for a good bit. And I don't know what's really going to slow them down. They remind me a lot of Vegas, to be honest. Speaking of Vegas, dropping 2 spots are the Vegas Golden Knights. It seems not playing bad. I don't want this to be like a reflection of, oh, Cody thinks the Vegas sucks, blah blah blah. They just get jumped by a couple of teams. They still have probably the second best goalie tandem in the league behind Swayman and Allmark in Boston. Jack Eichel has been tearing through every team he plays. The depth is still there for them. The defense is still doing what the Vegas defense does. I'm not worried about this team in the slightest, as long as they have at least one of Hill or Thompson going at the rate they've been going. They're going to be fine. And right now they have both of them, plus all of the other things that are going right for them. So Vegas is still playing very well. I don't want them dropping to make it seem like I don't think they're playing well. Just so happens that there are more than 2 good teams in the NHL. So for now, Vegas is 4. We'll see if they are able to jump, back to that number 1 spot. But there are a couple teams in particular that have been playing very well that might make that a bit difficult. Number 3, jumping 1 spot, are the Dallas Stars. The Stars, pretty similar to another team ahead of them here. Um, just a lot of depth all over the ice and a goalie that has been pretty much untouchable. If it were up to me, Andres probably my Vesna favorite up to this point in the season. The biggest difference for him compared to some other guys like Swayman Allmark, Hill Thompson, Demko, Bobrovsky, Talbot, etc., is that he's really the only one. Don't get me wrong, Scott Wedgwood's been good to this point, but Andres' numbers have been unbelievable. The Stars' depth has started to pick it up. Guys like Duchesne, Wyatt Johnson, um, started to really pick up some, I don't want to say slack because they weren't bad to start the year, but the production just wasn't there. Now the production is there. So this team is very much rounding into what we expected them to be. One of, if not the deepest teams up front in the entire league, with a very good back end and an elite goaltender. So the Stars have all things going for them right now. As long as Andres healthy, I have zero concerns about this team whatsoever. At number 2, dropping a spot from number 1 last week, are the Boston Bruins. Once again, not really a reflection of them playing poorly, just one team in particular leapfrogging them. The Bruins have had the same successes that they've had the entire year at this point. Swayman and Allmark, as I've mentioned a handful of times now, still playing fantastic. I think Swayman's really kind of projecting himself into maybe the 1A versus 1B role. I mean, it's really 1A and 1A in Boston, but someone's going to have better stats, and right now that's Swayman. I don't really have too much to say about this Bruins team. It's the same thing that I've said about them the last handful of weeks. Their depth has been great, better than anyone expected it to be. The defense has been good, better than anyone expected to be, even with McAvoy having that suspension. He's back. He's been playing great. Blah, 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 blah. The Bruins never leave. It's annoying. They're number 2. At number 1, jumping 4 spots, are the apparently just gross New York Rangers. The Rangers are without Shesterkin still and are just frying every team they play. They have by far the best power play in the league. They're getting scoring from everybody. They're without Adam Fox, and it doesn't seem to matter at all. The fact that they're doing this without Fox and Shesterkin is just terrifying. If you're a Metro fan, a Eastern Conference team fan, it really doesn't matter. This team has everything going right now. Everyone's scoring. Panarin is back. Zibanejad looks unbelievable. Chris Kreider is still the most annoying net front presence in the entire NHL. They just have everything going well for them. Jonathan Quick seemed to find the fountain of youth. His numbers have been great to start the year. You even got Louis Domingue coming in and winning games. So it's everything is going right for the Rangers, which, as a Capitals fan, once again, pretty annoying to me. But there's really no faults in this team to this point, especially over the last 2 weeks. If they get Shesterkin back and Shesterkin plays the way that Shesterkin does, it's going to be even worse. So they're the number 1 team for this week as of November 17th. And that's going to be it for this ranking. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Whether your team is ranked too high, too low, what teams you're excited to watch in the next couple weeks, what your thoughts have been on the global series so far. A lot of exciting stuff going on in the NHL leading up to American Thanksgiving. So, yeah, that's going to be it. Thanks as always for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, it is free. Let me know as well how you guys have been enjoying the nightly recaps. I was posting those previously on my TikTok. They're still being posted on my TikTok, but I wanted to start posting them on the YouTube for you guys here as well, so that you guys could kind of get that same nightly update that the TikTok fans have been getting. So let me know how you guys have been enjoying those. Thanks as always for watching these power rankings, and we'll see you guys next week. Talk soon.